Welcome along to another edition of Ask GCN Anything, this week coming to you from Alta Badia in the Dolomites. We are going to be answering questions on how to train for the Ventoux climb, also about V-brakes and gear ratios on cyclocross bikes, probably one for you, Si, and how to work your way through a fitness plateau.
Is that one for you? Possibly.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens when we come to it. Right, first question is Albert Marty. Will you guys be able to beat in a sprint someone like Lloydy Quintana, or maybe when you're professionals? Well, there's a question.
Yeah, I mean, we are really controversial here at GCN.
True.
I think I'm going to go for this though, and also be quite arrogant. I think I could have Quintana in a sprint finish.
What?
I'm not taking anything away from him. He's one of the best climbers, if not the best climber in the world, one of the best climbers of all time. But as such, he's a non-sprinter, and I don't think he packs much of a punch in terms of what's in the closing meters. So long as there's not too much riding beforehand, I think I'd be. I mean, after all, recently we did a video on how to find your maximum sprint power, and I got over 1,300 watts. So actually, my sprint power, if anything, has gone up since I was a pro, despite the fact that my FTP and general fitness has gone down quite some way.
Yeah, well, it's true, and that video actually is definitely worth a watch. Yeah. You can get through to it actually if you click just up there.
I think there's a poll on the screen as well, isn't there?
Yeah, do you think Dan could beat Nairo in a sprint? Vote yes or no, just up there. That's going to be interesting, that, Dan. Remember, 70% of viewers thought you were middle-aged. Just leave that there.
Polls don't always tell the truth, do they?
Huge torque is going to be going through the pedals in much the same way as Theo Boss or Sir Chris Hoy.
Yeah, exactly like Boss and Hoy.
One.
Well, I don't know about you, Si, but I'd quite like to quickly skip on to something far less controversial that won't get me into any trouble. This next one from Rick Cinder. He has been invited by a friend to climb the Mont Ventoux next June. Wants to know when he should start training and also how he should train for it, because there are short of Alps near him, but a few steepish climbs. Well, first of all, Rick, there's no harm in getting started with your training immediately. And along similar lines to a question I answered on last week's Ask GCN Anything, the first thing you need to decide is how long you think the Ventoux will take you roughly. So if you're going for the record, that might be under an hour.
You could probably get the record, couldn't you, mate? Just after you've out-sprinted Lloydy Quintana.
Well, out-sprint him at the top.
Right then. So yeah, I don't know. It depends how fit you think you are at the moment. But let's say it could take you a couple of hours, which is pretty reasonable going. You then obviously need to think about how you're going to ride it. So you can't ride at your threshold power for 2 hours. So you're going to be more at sweet spot. So you want to be focusing quite heavily on that in your training. So that's an intensity that's kind of hard but not too hard, so you're out of breath but it feels quite sustainable, doesn't it? And then you probably don't want to be too specific either to Mont Ventoux, because if you are going to start training 7 months in advance, then you probably going to get fit generally, I suppose. But we do have a video about specifically training for long climbs. There are 4 training sessions, in fact, so I'd probably check that one out.
Get in a good warm-up and then do 3 or 4 sets of 15-minute blocks where you spend 30 seconds just over your FTP, or what you'd be able to sustain for a long climb, and then 2 minutes just under it. Have 10 minutes easy between each and then do your cool down.
It's the non-rapid rapid-fire round now with myself and Si Richardson. We'll kick off with a question to do with cyclocross, the one for Si from Jacob Jarl. Hi guys, I've got an old cyclocross question for you. Basically, why didn't V-brakes make an appearance in cyclocross in the 90s?
Well, the simple answer is that when Shimano launched V-brakes, they changed the lever pull ratio on mountain bike brake levers. So basically, you squeeze the lever and it pulls a certain amount of cable. So road STI levers don't pull the same amount. So effectively, to get them to work, you need to set them up so they're super close to the rim, which obviously isn't practical. It meant they were mega powerful, but they didn't really work. You used to get those mini V-brakes. Do you remember those? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they had shorter arms, so they worked with the same lever pull as an STI lever, but then you had no mud clearance. So basically, for anywhere except Southern California and cyclocross, they didn't really work.
I always thought that V-brakes weren't very close to a V, were they? More like a U. Graham Cannell has asked, he's also got a cyclocross bike, currently with a 46 by 36 and 11-speed cassette, rides it on the road and finds top speed and hills an issue. So I want to know if you change it to a compact 34 by 50. Well, I've been on the Bike Calculator website to see if this is going to benefit you. Of course, a bigger chainring will make a difference, but with a 25mm tyre and 11-tooth cog at the back, your 46-tooth chainring is going to yield you a speed at 100 RPM of 53 kilometers per hour. Whereas if you upgrade to a 50-tooth chainring, that is going to go up to 58. So it's a 10% difference. Not huge, and 53 k's an hour already is a reasonable speed. Likewise, the 34-tooth will give you a slightly bigger range and a lower gear for the climb. So if you are riding predominantly on the road on your cross bike, I guess it is worth considering.
Yeah, 50-34 is a bit crap for riding cyclocross on there, isn't it? You're not going to use your 50 very much, even if you're Sven Nys probably. Right then, next up we've got this one from Abbey Shepherd. What's more important on a new bike, frame or components?
Well, this always depends, doesn't it, on whether you're planning on upgrading the components on your bike at a later date when you've got the budget to do so. If that is the case, then it's always worth getting a really good frame and slightly lesser components so that later the frame is worthy of the upgrades that you purchase. However, if it's a bike that you're just going to keep as is for a long time, you might as well just go for the best of both worlds, the best compromise between the frame and the component levels.
Yeah, there is something to bear in mind here actually, and that is if you are buying a bike with a certain group set on it that maybe is 8-speed, then actually it's really hard to upgrade that group set to a 9-speed without spending a load of money to changing loads of things at once. So that is worth bearing in mind actually. Depending on the price of the bike in the first place, it may well be that you want to invest in the whole package as opposed to the frame only.
Good advice. Next up then from MD Rashidul Islam, how do they paint a Tour Giro Vuelta winner's bike overnight after the penultimate stage? Well, the answer is that they don't. A lot of the special helmets, shoes and frames, etc. that you see used by leaders of classifications at the Grand Tours are actually done well in advance of the Grand Tour itself. They're just keeping their fingers crossed that the leader of their team performs and that they get to build the bike up and use it later on during the race or on the last day, as Chris Froome did with his red Pinarello. So in all likelihood, there's a whole host of polka dot green, yellow, red and pink bike components that have never ever been used or seen the light of day.
I know, imagine. And what would you do with either? You could never, as a bike manufacturer, you'd just be like, it would be awful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you couldn't put it on eBay, could you?
No, that would be shameful. Right, HNX Media, what's the opinion of GCN on waxing your chain? He'd love to see a full examination with some proper data and a proper demo.
Well, you had a bigger understanding of what waxing a chain meant than I did.
Well, so I'm imagining you're referring to, it's kind of quite a trendy thing where you basically treat the chain in a paraffin wax, and that's supposedly one of the fastest things you can do to a chain. But it does involve taking the chain off the bike, which to my mind makes it a bit of a faff, and for the sake of half a watt, I probably wouldn't be all that fussed about doing it. But you used to use chain wax.
Yeah, I used for a long time Castrol chain wax, which is for motorbikes, and the reason I ended up with that, there was no other lubricant lying around my garage, and my sister rides motorbikes, so I used hers, and it was incredible, very quiet, didn't attract much dirt at all, and I just assumed it was pretty efficient, and I'd used that, as I said, for a long time on my training bikes. However, recently at Eurobike, Ceramic Speed was saying in their testing that actually the quietest lubricants are often the ones that result in the most friction in your drivetrain, which is quite
incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, I wonder whether I'd actually forego a couple of watts just to not have a squeaky drivetrain, to be honest, but there we go.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? We will do some more investigation actually, because that's a great
Yeah, worth doing. Sid Nakter has been recently with his kids to the Grand Prix Cyclist Montreal. They cheered a rider that was dropped in the race and got the evil eyes. They wondered if there's any etiquette when cheering on dropped riders. That's definitely our area of expertise, isn't it? You said that you don't like being cheered when you dropped. I didn't mind it at all. Any cheering I could get was, in my mind, a good thing.
Well, yeah, so I always thought that, because when you've been dropped, inevitably you're not going to be very happy about it. He might have been absolutely nailed, at which point maybe he didn't even see you guys. He was just had that 1,000-yard glaze on, in which case you can forgive him. But actually, it wasn't that I didn't like it so much. It was just that I kind of, at the time I was in such a bubble, I didn't really understand why people were cheering for me, because in my head I was doing so badly. I just thought it was almost like, you know, just like, well done, yeah. And so that made me feel even worse about my performance. And then when I retired and I saw actually that it was kind of cool to, you know, even be dropped in a bike race, I was like, well, actually maybe people meant it in a different way.
It's great in the UK, isn't it? Come on, keep it going.
Yeah.
I am keeping it going. I'm going to get to the finish line. Finally, in the non-rapid rapid-fire round from David van der Gulik. He's been cycling since he was 11. He's now 25. And for the first time ever, he feels the need to go out training over the winter, but doesn't have the budget for indoor training setups, etc. So wants to know what he can do.
Well, like the hashtag says, outside is free. So you can ride your bike outside. And as long as you look after it, then the winter months should not take their toll. And also you can pick up indoor trainers on eBay or such like pretty cheaply now, can't you? You don't need a bells and whistles smart trainer to train indoors. You just need some way of providing resistance to your rear wheel and a GCN video. Yeah,
and as Si says, even if your job takes up all the daylight hours during the week, you still got the weekend. Just head outside.
Yeah, hashtag it's free. Right then, Sean Collier has got a good one here. He's 43 and has only been riding for a year, but in that time he's managed to knock off around an hour off his first couple of rides in the 60-mile region. But he's now finding it difficult to make further improvements. So what can we suggest?
Well, firstly, the improvements you have made are quite normal. Whenever you get into a sport, you've got lots of areas that you can improve on, so they come very quickly. And also not abnormal to reach the plateau that you've got to now. Not dissimilar, in fact, to the plateau that I've got to with my running. So I'm not sure if you saw the video over on our new sister channel, the Global Triathlon Network.
I think we all saw you running sitting down, Dan.
Yeah, with my arms around my ears somewhere. Anyway, what Mark made me realise is actually all I've been doing when I go out running is exactly that. I've not been doing anything specific. I've literally been going out and trying to get faster each day and each week. And I've reached a plateau after a year.
Yeah, so to combat that plateau, basically you just have to introduce a bit of variation to your riding or to Dan's running. And you could do it in a structured way, so like intervals, whereby you may have a steadier ride, but then ride extra hard up a few climbs, or indeed you just approach it in a different way. Fartlek training used to be called, didn't it? Where basically you would kind of just do a fairly flexible session, but again just going really hard in certain areas and much gentler in other areas as well.
And don't forget to factor in rest, because more is not always better, and sometimes you can reach a point of overtraining where actually you're going to be going the wrong way. Anyway, in this next video we have got a few killer training sessions for sportive riders, and on those 60-mile loops I think these are going to be very good for you as well.
This next session is also very time efficient. Climbing, repeat. So again, you want to warm up for a good 15 to 20 minutes, then find yourself a climb that's going to take about 5 minutes when you're going pretty hard.
Right, well that's the end of this week's Ask GCN Anything. You can leave your questions in the comment section down below or using the hashtag talkback across social media. We'll be back at the same time next week. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to GCN by clicking on the globe. Then we've got a couple of videos for you now. Firstly, down here, something which might help Rick training for the Ventoux or anyone else training for a big climb next year. How to train for climbs when you don't live near any.
Yeah, or why not head over to the Global Triathlon Network for a bit of a change. Check out how to run like a pro. That one is just down there.
Oh, I should watch that.
You really should.